So I've been thinking a lot about Sony announcing that they were going to cease physical game production for PlayStation consoles in January of 2028. Of course, this has upset a lot of people, understandably so. And right now, we are currently in the middle of a boycott of PlayStation consoles where people are being asked not to buy any games, not to download any games, not to connect online, not even to turn on their PlayStations, just completely black out. And of course, Sony has answered that by naturally reissuing the terms of service that explicitly state that you're only buying a license. So it seems like we're in kind of a hellscape in that regards. This actually made me think about some stuff when I saw this particular Reddit post saying GameStop is no longer getting physical copies of new games sent to stores unless someone places a pre-order. I thought that was really interesting. Now, I couldn't find any specific article that cited this, although that has seemingly been the experience of many people, myself kind of included here. I have this game right here, Rune Factory Guardians of Azuma. This is a game that people oft don't even know about because it is one of the Switch cartridges that is a hybrid Switch 1 and Switch 2 combo cartridge. So it's got the full game on there. You could put it in Switch 1 and play the game, play the Switch 1 version that is. You put the Switch 2 version in, it's got the Switch 2 data all ready to go. This was a game that I was going to get along with Cyberpunk 2077 when I picked up my pre-order of the Switch 2, which if you want to check out, I got a nice little video about that up there. If you want to take a look at that. But they only had Cyberpunk. That Best Buy literally had every Switch launch game except for this one. They didn't get any copies of that one at all, which was kind of wild considering they had like 300 or so Switch 2 systems at launch. So you'd figure at least one person would want to buy that game and they'd stock that one game at least. I don't know. Maybe they could have had copies. Maybe some of the people in front of me, if they had any copies, maybe they picked that up beforehand. But I digress. I happened to find this at my local GameStop, the last copy they had on launch day. And so that's how I got it. I didn't pre-order it or anything like that. I didn't really consider it because back in the day, it wasn't that uncommon for when a game came out at launch that these stores would have a few copies to pick up. Usually like at least 2 or 3 that weren't the pre-orders, but that's not really the case anymore. And this makes me think that GameStop, according to them at least, they only got the one copy because nobody pre-ordered it and they just got the one copy. I bought it. That's what they told me at least. That might not be true, but let's assume it is. And let's think about the number of GameStop stores in the country. Let's consider that I've never seen this game at Walmart, Target. Like I said, Best Buy didn't apparently carry it. I'm sure you probably could have got it on Amazon, but this might actually be a pretty rare game. I won't realize this could be one of these games that 10, 15 years from now goes for like $200, $300 or something stupid like that, that people will buy. Who knows? It could go for even more possibly because a lot of the Switch 2 games will be game key card onlys and the servers will be shut down and all that good stuff, right? It probably won't be that dire, I am sure, but this really had me thinking here because GameStop has been talking about this, of course, that they're no longer going to be, the physical games don't really matter to them anymore. I'm sure if you've been in a GameStop store recently, you probably have seen how the store looks now versus how it used to look like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, during the height of like the PS4 kind of being hot, or even earlier when the 360, the Wii, the PS3, those were the hot systems at that time. Of course, Ryan Cohen talking about that it represents less than 12% of their current business model. And you have to consider this includes their retro section because they have been pushing GameStop Retro recently, advertising that they're selling games for older consoles. The anything from the NES to the Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, N64, PlayStation, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, Xbox, Xbox 360, Nintendo Wii, DS, Game Boy. You know what I'm talking about when it comes to retro systems, people. And they have been getting a decent selection of that, although it still is primarily the newer stuff. But this is what it's really about now. GameStop's all about the trading cards. They're about the collectibles. The local GameStop that I go to, they have Magic night. I think 2 nights a week, or I think one night they do Magic and one night they do Pokemon or something like that. Because those are the 2 big card games, of course. And that's really what the store is now. It's merchandise and all this other good stuff. We're going to get to a future where if you really appreciate a game, you're not going to be able to appreciate it by buying a physical copy that you can put in your console. You're going to have to buy a t-shirt or a pop figure or a pair of socks or something like that. You're going to have to buy a Magic the Gathering expansion for the game. They're going to have Magic the Gathering like Elden Ring or something like that, or something stupid, right? Magic the Gathering Mario. That's just how it's gonna be, apparently, I guess. I don't know, but it is kind of wild when you think about it. And you have to think about GameStop has always been considered like the top retailer that's gaming focused. Because yes, you can get games at a lot of other places, but they're not really focused on it. Like Walmart, Target, Best Buy, they're not going to lose any sleep if they stop carrying physical video games. They're going to be having other stuff. You would think, oh, GameStop's going to be crashing and burning, except they have already planned for this because they see the writing on the wall. And it's really sad to see, but that's how it's looking now, right? That is really how it's looking. So we know Sony, they aren't going to back down. What about Microsoft? Well, Microsoft's kind of an interesting case because they're talking about, we're going to be putting a disk drive in the Helix and all this good stuff. Turns out that's kind of a load of garbage. This is kind of old news. This is stuff that happened last year, but this shows that Microsoft has been kind of like the forefront of this even before Sony. They might not be announcing, we're going to be stopping physical production of games by this specific date. They're just going to just not make physical games. That's their plan. In case you don't remember, The Outer Worlds 2, Ninja Gaiden 4, Gears of War Reloaded, big Microsoft published titles that did not have physical disc releases. They did on the PlayStation 5, interestingly enough, because Microsoft's also stupid and puts their games on competitor consoles, but I digress. The Xbox Series people, no, you didn't get a disc at all. If you bought Gears of War Reloaded, you didn't get anything. You just got the game on your library. That's it. At least the Outer Worlds 2 and Ninja Gaiden 4 people had boxes they could put on their shelves with download codes inside. But that is the Microsoft experience. As you've also seen a lot of the Nintendo Switch 2 titles they have published, like Fallout 4, for example, download code only, doesn't even have a game key card. On the other hand, we do have Indiana Jones and Oblivion that actually had physical releases, but apparently, from what I understand, the prices for those have been climbing up. It's hard to find those particular games, and they didn't produce enough. This is kind of a built-in ecosystem for it to fail. It really is. It doesn't matter if you only buy games physically. The fact of the matter is there are a lot more people that don't. When it comes to Switch 2, other than getting Mario Kart World, the digital copy included with the console, I only have physical releases. I don't even have any game key cards. And with the exception of this and Cyberpunk, I've been buying all Nintendo exclusive stuff. So stuff that Hasn't been put anywhere else. So there is that. Speaking of Nintendo, how are they doing over there? I'm sure you guys don't remember, but I did a video a while back about how they were doing. You could check that out. But let's talk about good old Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave. That is the next big Nintendo title. It's going to be coming out next month. The latest in the Fire Emblem franchise, one of the most popular strategy RPG series of all time, and probably the longest running Nintendo RPG series that I could think of. I mean, they literally have been making Fire Emblem games since the Famicom, the OG. And we got good old Fortune's Weave. You can pre-order it on the eShop for $69.99 right now, which is a pretty standard price for a brand new AAA game. What about a physical copy? A physical copy, $79.99. In case you have been living under a rock, Nintendo had announced that physical games are going to be $10 more. Now, they actually said it as digital games are going to be $10 cheaper. That is the good way to put a spin on it. That's the spin of the story. The actual story is the physical game costs $10 more. There's a lot of reasons for that. But one of the biggest reasons, if not the biggest reasons, is because they want you to buy the game on the eShop. They don't want you to get a physical copy of the game. That's because they make more money even with that $10 discount on that digital sale, because they do not have to spend money on the production of the media. They don't have to spend money on shipping and logistics. They don't have to share revenue with retail locations. So and since it's a Nintendo published title, they don't have to share that money with anybody. You know, Nintendo gets 100% of that $69.99. Whereas the actual breakdown of the physical copy, they're probably getting about maybe 70%, 65, 70% of that $79.99. So, you know, even Nintendo is going to be doing this kind of thing. You know, everybody's like, oh, Nintendo's going to be the savior. No, the point of this, if you've read the thumbnail for this video when you clicked on it, there is no savior. There's nothing that's going to be coming to save the day. We're not going to be having a major company swoop in and help people out. Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, they have already played their hands. We have, of course, on the PC side, you know, Steam. When was the last time that Valve has put a game on physical media? Just think about that. When was the last time you were able, well, I guess for that matter, when was the last time they published a game, right? I guess, you know, there is, of course, Half-Life Alyx, and I think they did well, they're working on that Deadlock game, but you know what I mean. They don't really make games anymore for the most part. You know, Epic Game Store, Epic, good old Epic, of course. Do you think they are nice purveyors of physical media? When Alan Wake 2 originally came out, there was not a physical release of any form at all. And it wasn't until like a year or so later that it did eventually get a physical release on console. And when that did happen, it was at a higher price point than the game originally was released at. You think they're going to be saving the day? What about GOG? You know, GOG does offer DRM-free games, which is awesome. It is very awesome. You can make your own physical media with that. Back it up to a Blu-ray, DVD, USB drive, SD card, whatever you want. But does GOG offer that service themselves and then ship it to you? Hell no. Of course not. Then you have a lot of the small players like Evercade and whatnot. But let's be real, guys. That's not going to make any headwinds. There's homebrew games. Fantastic stuff, of course. I love me some homebrew. But that's not even going to make a dent of a fraction of a percentage of the market. So, it's going to be all digital. And then eventually one day it's going to be all in the cloud. Unless the masses actually change their patterns. Because One thing you might not realize with that Sony blackout, it happened to coincide with something else. Right here. Currently, the beta for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4 is ongoing right now. Right in the middle of this blackout. It's almost like whoever planned this blackout couldn't have chose a worse time. A worse time for this. It is actually absolutely impressive. And by the way, PlayStation, that's the #1 platform for this beta. There are more people playing on PlayStation than on any other platform for this particular open beta. So, yeah. It's almost like we're kind of our own worst enemy. I'm not talking about you specifically, but I'm talking about the gaming population is kind of its own worst enemy. They're the ones that have ushered this in. So, I don't know what to tell you. I guess from my perspective, I will play the old shit. I will play on PC. You know, that seems like the best avenue in my opinion. But I guess you'll have to decide what the best is for you. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to check out the most recent video that I did right above my head. I think you're going to appreciate it. And if not, the algorithm's going to send something that is going to be very fire. I am sure you'll appreciate that. And thank you again very much for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to consider subscribing. But that's going to be the last line.